In this video, I'm going to be reacting to the strength and conditioning methods of one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world, Terence Crawford. So we're starting off with some med ball ice skaters, a fantastic exercise that we use quite often at Boxing Science. Great for lateral movement, lateral power and speed, and also lateral stability as well. Adding the medicine ball to an ice skater movement is effective in that kind of intent, driving across laterally. But most importantly, it's getting your hip into a much stronger position. You can see it's having to dip his hips back and the ball is coming across the body, and his challenge is to not move the hips, the knees out to the side, or knees coming out in valgus. His hips are having to really work here. So it's increasing the demand on the glute and glute med, which is very important for controlling lateral movement, but also then reproducing that lateral speed and power. The main challenge for Terence Crawford here as well is upper body and lower body separation. A slight rotation in there. What he doesn't want to do is rotate all his body across. He's pulling it into his hips, but not twisting all his body over. This is where he's getting more kind of core stability. Obliques are firing here as well. Important for rotational performance as well as controlling that lateral movement. So he's cycling himself up here for a massive rack pull. I think he's got about 180 to 200 kilos on the bar. Oof. Heavy, but he got the work done. Rack pull's fantastic exercise to overload the trunk and overload the lower body. Due to movement limitations and postural stability, some boxers may be limited in achieving their true maximum strength when performing trap bar deadlifts or traditional deadlifts. So sometimes lifting from the floor might not optimize an athlete's strength levels. So we use partial range lifts at Boxing Science, whether that's trap bar from the blocks, handstand squats, or we use this exercise, the rack pull. Now the rack pull is a fantastic exercise to develop grip strength, which is fantastic for hand strength and also punch power through the forearms and upper limb. Great for postural stability and overloading the trunk, because it's very, very challenging to maintain that posture during the deadlift. And also because you're increasing the amount of weight load that athlete is lifting, you're looking at peak force development that can transfer to rate of force development, and also peak hip extension forces as well, which is crucial in whipping the hips through the kinetic chain to transfer that force from the lower body through to the upper body. Look at Terence Crawford's technique here. It's not too bad. I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. He keeps his back relatively straight. His hips move too much to start off with. You can see that his knees push back quite a lot without the bar really shifting. The bar and the body to move simultaneously, and it's slow, but it gets the job done as it gets up there. Probably needs a little bit more shoulder retraction and upward protraction of the shoulders rather than it being kind of depressed in that position. But overall, about 6 or 7 out of 10. But for his strength levels, fantastic. It's lifting 180 to 200 kilos here, I'm guessing by looking at the weight plates, which for him is around 2.5 to 2.7 times his body weight. This is super strong. You know, we expect our athletes to be hitting 2.2, 2.4 times the body weight on rack pull such as this. So for him to be in anywhere between 2.5, 2.7 times his body weight, pretty impressive. So Crawford here is doing some jump shrugs, quite typical of like track and field based athletes. He's actually doing this at the NSCA Centre, them kind of athletes there, a mixed bag. So no surprise that he's doing some sort of Olympic lifting there. This is probably used in the speed strength phase for athletes that might not be as proficient at Olympic lifting. He gets into a good position at the top, is accelerating all the way through the movement, getting a triple extension and a shrug at the top. He's massively underloading here. He's got about 25 pounds on the bar. I'm guessing that's 25 pounds with how small the weight discs are. So that's probably about 40 kilos. When we're just talking about the rack pull, Terence Crawford's working about 180 to 200 kilos on that rack pull. So he's probably working around about 20% of his 1 rep max here. When we look to do loaded jumps, we look to go between 40 and 60% of an athlete's 1 rep max, as we've seen that this is the optimal load for momentum, velocity times total mass. So that's the body mass plus the additional load. That's beneficial for rate of force development and peak force development as well. With that 40 to 60%, and looking at Crawford here, around about 20% of his 1 rep max of the rack pull is going to be massively underloaded, probably a little bit in no man's land. So what is good about this movement is that Crawford is doing a speed strength movement under a little bit of load. What I would say is probably change the loading from a straight bar to like something like a trap bar, start to load that up a little bit heavier, or use dumbbells. With the bar in front of the body, it's quite restrictive. You can see that is quite rounded in his posture when performing the initial stages of the jump. Using something like dumbbells if you're wanting to go a little bit lighter for the speed strength phase. If you're wanting to do Olympic lifting variation, I'll be looking to load up that bar a little bit more, doing a clean pull without leaving the floor. So Crawford here is using a very popular tool, the Prowler, fantastic conditioning tool for boxing. It can also be loaded up a little bit heavier and used for strength and acceleration tool. Mostly I'd use Prowler as a conditioning tool. So this would be for our sprint interval training or max effort sprint training, where we're swapping the running base activity with the Prowler because you have less impact forces. High speed running has a certain amount of risk. That's why we do a lot of our repeated sprint or sprint interval training on the air bike or other non-running base activity. With the Prowler, either 12 seconds on, 48 seconds off, or 15 seconds on, 45 off to train muscle buffering capacity to be able to control muscular acidosis. But also it's very, very good to do the 30-second max out effort. We've done this quite often. We did it quite a few years ago now on one of our Ultimate Coach for Combat Sports workshops. The 30-second max out effort, put the Prowler up towards body weight, and we'd give an athlete a target of hitting a certain amount of distance in the first 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and then 30 seconds. It's important to do this because with the Prowler, if you've got 30 seconds and you haven't got that feedback in terms of distance and speed and intent, very likely to just go at one pace. So if you're going to do the Prowler as a conditioning tool and you're wanting to do 30-second max out sprints, give yourself a target to hit a peak intensity over 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and then see how you can maintain that intensity over 30 seconds. Staying on the theme of the Prowler, we've got some reverse sled drags. Now this is a fantastic tool to work the quadricep muscles and to protect the knee. Now Terence Crawford, the way that he kind of feints, puts a lot of impact forces through his lead knee, whether that's in a southpaw or an orthodox position, can see why he potentially wants to protect that knee. How often does he box in a week? How often does he run in a week and everything like that? It's potentially going to pick up some sort of niggles in his knee. Protecting the knee is really important, and this is a fantastic exercise to do so. You want to be doing this over a certain amount of time, whether that's 20 to 40 seconds, and you want to be doing about 4 or 5 sets on this. So Crawford here is using some isolated leg exercises, leg curls and the leg extension. Now with our research, we know that lower body impulse and lower body strength is vital. And this is more based off the rate of force development, amount of force that you can push through the floor. The legs work in sync. So rather than isolating a certain muscle group, we look to use the lower body, quads, hamstrings, glutes, and also the calf muscles as well. Use them all within sync to produce as much force from the lower body as possible. And this is what transfers into more powerful punch. So this is why we do majority exercises such as trap bar deadlift, squats, rack pulls, everything that athlete is like basically in contact with the floor. With isolated exercises, you don't get that relationship with the floor, so you won't get that kind of ground reaction forces that are vital in producing fast and hard punches. You're isolating that muscle group rather than it working in sync. However, there is a justification for this. As we said in the reverse Prowler drags, Terence Crawford is suffering with some sort of knee injuries or anything like that, leg extensions, doing some hamstring curls. This can be a beneficial tool to try and protect that knee, and it could be a decent warm-up tool as well, just getting the muscles firing before working onto the more intensive compound lifts. So when looking at Terence Crawford's training, what's available on social media, whether that's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, I've seen that he does a lot of class training. There's some benefits to this. There's motivation, there's keeping it fresh in the gym. Boxing can be a very lonely sport, especially if you train one-to-one with your boxing coach and then one-to-one with your strength and conditioning coach. You might need somebody there to a bit of camaraderie or a bit of motivation, pushing yourself that little bit more. But at the same time, when working with boxers, especially at the high level that Terence Crawford's working at, I'll be looking to work on them as an individual. All the people here in this class are a range of different ages, abilities, sizes, genders. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. This is why it's really important that we do our testing battery with our athletes to highlight the strengths and areas for improvement. We do an individual program working around movement limitations, strength training goals, length away from the competition, training history, age. Everything is under consideration when developing a training plan and to suit that individual and to optimize their performance. Sometimes I get athletes working together if they're crossing between a training phase and they're working on the same thing at the same time. Even if they're working on different things, sometimes I'll have them working together, working on different exercises, and sometimes this can raise morale and motivation in the gym. And also setting some numbers, setting some PBs and comparing them to other athletes to give them the motivation to put in that extra 1, 2 or 5% into their training session to try and push themselves to the limit. So there's benefits to class training and group training, and there's also some cons. I've been more looking to work on the individual and structuring a plan to help to optimize their performance. So we've got an interesting exercise here where it's going from a hip thrust into a powerful banded press into an isometric tension. Now, I can see some of the benefits for this exercise is going from a kneeling position into a powerful hip thrust, powerful hip extension forces, driving through the kinetic chain, pressing into the mat. It's got that need to produce force and speed, but then also to create large amounts of isometric tension at the end range. Now, this is really important for the punch because we accelerate, we relax, and then we snap when we come into contact with the opponent. This is something that Terence Crawford is really, really good at with his technique and timing, especially towards latter stages of his career. He's become a much bigger puncher, and this is due to that kind of that snap at the end range of the punch. Which is really good about this exercise is that it's attacking the isometric exercise. At Boxing Science, we use isometric exercises to generate that force and speed, but working towards a snap of the punch. But we go from a relaxed state into very, very powerful isometric contraction. When doing isometric exercises, athletes can be guilty of just kind of pushing against a movable object, generating force slowly over time. When we do either the general hold, something like floor press or isometric hip thrust, or doing a very specific exercise, we encourage our athletes to go from relaxed state into producing that high amounts of isometric force in a very, very short amount of time. And this is exactly what you need to do in the punch. Accelerate, relax, and then you snap, and you've got to produce that force very, very quickly. Something that's really good with Crawford here as well is that he's using bands, so that's just increasing tension towards the end range of the punch. Now, this is really important, especially for athletes that have a long reach, to increase that length tension relationship. So how much force that you can produce at the end range of the punch or when your muscles are at full length. Now, this is really important for Crawford. His reach is far beyond the averages of the top 20 boxers in the BoxRec rankings at welterweight. So his reach is really, really long. To get that leverage on the punch, that length tension relationship, he needs to try and improve the amount of tension and force that he can produce at the very end range of the punch. And this is probably why Crawford's become such a big puncher. Dumbbell chest press here, and not to be too critical, but the technique isn't optimal. Probably a 5 out of 10 for this one. Gets good position in terms of his elbows, is getting full depth in the movement, and also it's not really arcing his back, which a lot of athletes end up doing, and also not using his shoulders too much. However, what I would say is that with his feet up, limiting the arch in the back, but it's also limiting the amount of load that you can end up lifting. I would only do this with athletes that are struggling with any shoulder injuries. I mostly do this from floor position as well, with the feet up, to create that core tension and to protect the shoulders. But if you're looking to optimize upper body strength and upper body pressing strength, I'll be taking the feet down and putting them on the floor. The tempo, to go a little bit slow on the way down, and look to utilize the lats. A lot of athletes just let the dumbbells drop. You want to make sure that you're pulling down, using the lats, creating that strong foundation to then fire from in your chest press. We mentioned a little bit earlier on in the video Crawford's reach and that importance to create that snap at the end range of the punch and to increase that length tension relationship. You see, Crawford is not really getting that full extension on the arm during the press, so he's only getting the kind of peak force from here rather than going all the way through the movement. This is why it's so important for athletes to use accommodated resistance, getting a band around the back, increasing that tension towards the end range of the lift. And this is getting the triceps more involved, but also increasing the tension all the way through, and then this can transfer towards a powerful punch. Okay guys, that's the end of this episode of Boxing Science Reacts, looking at the training methods of Terence Crawford. Very good to look at the wide range of exercise techniques he uses. He's a fantastic athlete and a fantastic boxer. If you're not a subscriber to the YouTube channel yet, hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button so you can support the growth of the YouTube channel. Go check out our other Boxing Science Reacts videos where we're looking at the training methods of Canelo, Bivol, Javonta Davis, Artur Beterbiev, some fantastic exercise techniques used, so you can look at how the superstars of the sport train and help adapt it towards your training goals. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you on the next episode of Boxing Science Reacts.